Welcome to the first episode of the Due North Political Podcast. I'm joined by Mike Machenbacher, Leon Francis, and Ryan Schumacher. Welcome, guys.
Good to be here.
Pretty stoked, man.
We're going to have a little fun. We're going to have a little in-depth conversation, maybe a little humor. Who knows? We'll see where it goes, okay? But first of all, we've got something that happened on Sunday for the first time in 46 years. So I think we got to bring a little patriotism to our first show and celebrate the boys of Milan is what I'm calling them, the boys of Milan. So let's give it up for the American United States hockey team. Just a little riffing on our Canadian friends. Do you guys remember the hang on.
Gremlins.
Yep. Do you remember where you were in 1980 when they won it 46 years ago?
I do not, as I was 5 years old at the time. So
I was 8.
I remember I was at Bismarck High School basketball bus coming back from Solon, North Dakota, and we had it on the radio, and we were all very excited when they won. It was one of those things in life that you don't forget, kind of like Elvis dying and a lot of other things, Charlie Kirk assassination, things like that. I want to mention to you guys, just out of a little humor, the United States coach Mike Sullivan. He's the New York Rangers coach. He said after the hockey game, the press asked him what kind of character his team had, and he said, the world is made up of whiskey drinkers and milk drinkers, and this team was full of whiskey drinkers. I think that fits the American spirit, don't you?
looked like it the way they were partying last night in Miami.
Yeah, they went on a bender. I would like to have 1 hour of that partying, and then I'd be willing to go home. What do you think? Can you make it longer than that, Leon?
I don't know, man. Back in the day, yes, sir. More, and you start playing Toby Keith. Oh, let's go. But and I saw them when they accepted the phone call, when they Trump called them. Man, those dudes were stoked, and I love seeing that. Because you get way too many of the people that are. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm standing on stolen land and blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, come on. And then people that don't want to rep the American flag. So what are you doing? What do we sorry.
This was pure unadulterated patriotism. That's all it was. It was so fun to watch. And they did such a good job. They wouldn't get sidetracked by any of the media. They just stuck to their message. We're here to bring the country together, and we should all celebrate it. It was a heck of a game.
I don't even think it was a message. I think it's just the ethos. There's a different kind of ethos around like hockey players. Used to be for baseball players. These solid fixtures of Americana. The people that gravitate toward those genres, they're normally really patriotic. So they don't need a script. They don't need a message. It just is who they are, and you gotta love that.
I heard there was 50 legislators that aren't going to be attending the State of the Union tonight. Maybe we can just let the hockey players sit down there on the floor. A bunch of open seats.
Drinking some beers.
Yeah, right.
I just don't know how they're going to play in the next couple days, but they're younger than I am. They'll figure it out.
Mm.
Guys, we're going to move to our first segment. We call it My 2 Cents.
Nice.
Here's where I bring a unique question, and it's the same question to all of you, and you bring your unique perspective to the topic of my choice. So are you ready?
Jeez.
Sure.
Let's go.
That was a mouthful. Okay, the Trump presidency has revealed many concerning problems within our leviathan of a federal government, to put it mildly. As a small government supporters, all four of us, the level of corruption still comes as a shock, I would imagine, to everybody as to its degree.
Mm.
We could probably go the entire show talking about everything that has been exposed to anyone willing to see. But I want you to tell me, what was the number one thing uncovered and laid bare to you that shocked you to your core, or just kind of took your breath away, that you didn't realize it was this bad? We'll start with you, Mike. What do you got?
I would have to say that, with the corruption, it's got to be the lack of the arrests and the accountability. We've been hearing this forever now. We've got massive Medicaid fraud. We've got fake daycare centers, money laundering, being laundered to political candidates through supposed charities and such. But where are the national stories, showing the people responsible? Where's all the indictments? Where's the arrests? You hear one or two there, but why does the story always make the front page news, but then the follow-up either never happens or just gets buried somewhere? If there's something that really turns my crank, it's defrauding taxpayers. And, you remember back, right away under Trump's second presidency, when Doge was in there and they were finding millions of dollars being paid to dead people. You guys recall that? Yeah. So where was it going? Exactly right. I mean, who's cashing the checks? Did they fix the issue? How did it happen? Did we get our money back or anything? We saw a few people now starting to get arrested in the daycare fraud that we're seeing out in Minnesota and some other states. But what's the updates? Where did the story go? Who initiated it? Did they install new policies to make sure that this is not going to happen again? These are the things that really bother me. And, you always hear the story, but you never hear the follow-up. And I want to be assured that these things are being fixed and taxpayers are getting their money back. It's
like squirrel, right? All of a sudden our attention has to go to something else, and we forget that. And one of the things it's a good thing you bring this up, but we have a couple hundred congressmen. They can't stay on track of this stuff and get to the microphone every other day and keep it in the news. You know what I mean? Instead of just dropping it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think go ahead, Leon.
Well, they always trot out these, like you said, the squirrel moment. So we got the whole Minnesota thing, and then you get anti-ICE protest and the rioting, and then sometimes I think America has the attention span of a goldfish, and they know that. They know that.
It's a big distraction, the anti-ICE protests. It was just a big distraction to take your eyes off of what's going on over here, and let's now focus on this and bring everybody's attention to that rather than what's truly the problem.
Leon, what did you come up with your big shocker? What was exposed in Trump 1.0 or 2.0 that got your goat and you went, whoa, man?
Actually, there were several. But I don't think anybody's going to hit this one, so this is the one I'm going for. The election process, the fact that we are so vulnerable, the fact that all we got was free and fair, the most free and fair election, blah, blah, blah. And what they weren't telling us, and folks like me, I know because I'm like kind of in that political world. Like I saw what was happening in Georgia. You could see it. And then the fact that they moved the judges in the right place in order to, make sure that whatever they did was legal. I forget the Democrat attorney, the guy that kind of spear pointed that whole thing, and just how fragile our election process is, how they could manipulate the whole system, like all of the 2020 controversies, the rushed mail-in voting changes that they implemented without like legislative approval. All those irregularities that we were just supposed to look past, like, hey, what's happening over there? And you still, right now today, if you ask anyone about the 2020 election, oh, there was no fraud, none. And as a matter of fact, they CYA'd so good that if you said that on social media, you were deplatformed. Like that to me is just shocking. It means, and it, to me, to a guy like me, I look at election cycles in the past and I go, well, how many of those were tainted? So
go ahead.
I
that was
understand.
mine.
I was just going to say, I understand the laws in each state. Each state can control their own election process and everything. But I think two things: we need to have a federal national election day where it's considered like a national holiday. Everybody's off of work. You've got no excuse that you can't make it to the polling place. We need to get rid of all this mail-in voting, from that starts in mid-September. And then secondly, we all recall 26 years ago what happened in Florida with the hanging chads. Florida was a disgrace at that time, but now in the last, however many election cycles or national election cycles, they can count 10 million votes in the evening and be done by like 9 p.m. And you know who the winner is. You're not waiting 7 weeks to figure out counting how many other votes come in. I'm not sure why we can't all implement a process like Florida currently has. They had problems, they fixed it. Nobody questions anything going on in Florida anymore as far as their voting.
There's only one reason, right? And we all know what that reason is. I mean, it doesn't even need to be said. That night when the election, it's 2 a.m, that graph looked like Al Gore's climate change graph where the temperatures were going to go, didn't it? I mean, it was just crazy. And nothing's got me convinced that it's ever going to change. I don't think we put things in place. They've got the SAVE Act right now they're discussing. But
Well, that's racist, though.
Yeah.
We can't have it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, right. We got to remember that. We got to stay away from racism. And so I don't know how it get fit. You're exactly right, Ryan. Florida does it, and they do it magically. And they do it because they were a national embarrassment. Arizona California, I think, takes a couple, 2-3 months.
Yeah.
Figure theirs out.
Yeah, we didn't even know who controlled Congress till Christmas on the last election because of California and all their.
Well, let's move to you, Ryan. You had the last comment, but what was your shocker of the Leviathan federal government corruption?
The thing that stuck out to me was and I haven't really thought about this prior, was the sheer number of non-governmental organizations or NGOs that they're called that existed. I had done some research on it, and there are 1.5 million NGOs in the United States and an estimated 10 million of these in the world. And if they were a country, they would have the fifth largest economy in the world. It seems like every pet project has an NGO that is being funded by taxpayers. We all know, about politicians in government that going to work for lobby firms and get lucrative deal from there. But I hadn't known about these NGOs, all these people. You had former governor of Georgia, or former governor candidate of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, who was involved in one with green energy funding for rural areas. They had no balance sheet, no nothing. And all of a sudden at the end of Biden administration's term, they got $2 billion grant. All of that money's not going into the hands of where its stated purpose is. A lot of these people are getting, hefty salaries, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 salaries from these places. So that was the big thing that stuck out to me was these NGOs.
It's basically a money laundering system. And I'll even put Catholic Charities and Lutheran Social Services into that same type of thing. You run the money through, they kick a little bit back, some family members get paid, things like that. Then they kick a little bit money back as contribution, campaign contributions. It's a beautiful system, and a lot of people have gotten wealthy off of that. You guys familiar with the Data Republican gal online?
Yeah.
She's done a lot of digging into this stuff, and she's brilliant, and she exposes a lot of it. But then you go back to Mike's, where he started this segment, and whatever happens to these people after they're discovered, you know what I mean?
Well, I think you don't have the media that follows up on it. The media nowadays, they're all reporters. They're not journalists. They're not investigative, and or either that or they're cognizantly aware they don't want to investigate this stuff because they're liberals themselves.
And you
so-
also have you have that one liberal reporter that had uncovered the whole Epstein thing, but her story was shelved.
Oh
And
yeah,
she
yeah.
said
Yep.
that there was nothing she could do about it. The Data Republican, the amount of data that girl crushes,
Yep.
that's and the fact, again, going back to Mike, how many people have ever even heard the Data Republican? Probably not very many, but you got all this concrete data. You have the Doge team that uncovered all of that fraud, and still, again, it makes a guy like me a little jaded. You're like, there's nothing we can do. I feel like a battery in this thing. I'm just putting energy and money and time and sweat into this country that I love, knowing that it's run by a bunch of corrupted crooks, man. It's to me, it's insane. In Minnesota, where you are, Ryan, you're in Minnesota, right?
Yep.
So, where you are, the fact of the matter is, and when we're talking about, and it's all one big cabal. When we're talking about voter fraud, and you roll that over into NGOs like the Catholic Charities and the Lutheran Social Services, they brought all those people in here. And then you find out about ballot harvesting and what's going on there. And you find out about sacks of cash going through the airport in Minneapolis. And you're just like, oh my God. And the little people, they'll go to jail. They'll track those guys down. But the people that enable that, they'll never be touched. And that's a doggone shame.
That's the ones that I want touched, because those are the ones that are continuously instigating this thing here, and they're using the little guys as pawns. They're the ones doing all the work, but it's the top guys benefiting. You take down the top guy, the whole thing crumbles.
Leon, you mentioned the sacks of cash going through the Minneapolis airport here. I don't know how many people in our audience realize, but over in 2024, there was $340 million that got sent through the airport. In 2025, there was another $350 million. So that's almost $700 million in 2 years. Now, TSA reported this. There's nothing they could do because it was all legally declared, but it was in carry-on bags. So that's almost $1 million a day. And it was handled mainly by a few couriers that were handling this cash and taking it overseas. And and the reports were they were of certain nationality, but
Somali.
I'm not sure how $700 million can be accumulated in 2 years by a population here in Minnesota that's 81% on welfare.
It's
what he said.
It's scary. And the interesting thing about it is 50% of the country, so the left, is entirely fine with all this as long as they're in charge. But if Trump's in charge, then there's corruption. If there's a Democrat in the White House and in charge of the country, then there's no corruption anywhere to be found. It's only on the right that we have corruption. Now, us people on the right, us sane thinkers, we're more like the Reagan thing, trust but verify. I think now a lot of people are getting to Leon's place where they're even trust but verify doesn't work. This thing has to be broken up into smaller pieces. It's gotten out of control. It's gotten so big. There's the only way to do it is, like I said a couple weeks ago, Ma Bell. Remember, Ma Bell was again, you guys are kind of young, but you used to have dial phones, guys, and one company kind of owned the entire thing, and then the United States government broke it up, and poof, we got cell phones eventually. And something like that has to happen, whether it's the FBI, whether it's the FDA, whether you name it, down the line. It's gotten too big. But one side of the country is entirely fine with it as long as they're in charge. I don't think sitting with us four, none of us are fine with it, regardless of who's in charge, right?
Exactly.
Fraud is fraud. It doesn't matter which side it's on. We want it to end.
If a study came out and said Kevin Kramer, defrauded the North Dakota taxpayers of, I don't know, 2 dimes and a nickel, I want that guy investigated. Because it's my money.
That's called integrity, right? That's what it is.
And that I was just going to point out too. I know you mentioned, we're talking about the Somalians here, but just this is just the one that just I think tipped its head up through the iceberg here right now, and that's why they're paying so much attention to it. But I don't care what race, what nationality.
Yeah, exactly.
If this is a bunch of white Republicans that are doing this, I'm sorry.
And I'm sure there are, and they need to be held accountable.
It probably is, but that's why we, like I said, this is the one that just poked his head up right now, and that's why it's getting so much attention. But I'm in the boat that it's got to be everybody. If there's, I don't care who's taking a nickel illegally or funneling it illegally, there needs to be, we need to fix it.
Okay, we're going to move to segment 2 of our show, guys. Segment 2 is called Fire Away, where I ask each of my co-hosts their specific take on a topic of my choice. Each one gets a specific question. Let me set the question up for you. It has not always been this way, but it is undeniable now. Politics is in everything and everywhere. It is in the water table, and it has contaminated everything, including schools, youth sports, our neighborhoods, and as we have seen in the last few days, even the Olympics. When you visit the Supreme Court, you see the statue out front of Lady Justice, and Lady Justice is blind. But that concept is now just a dream. We have a DEI hire serving on the Supreme Court. We have rogue district court judges dictating the entire country. Try getting a fair trial in a blue state if you're a conservative. It's not going to happen. It is even rumored that the Chief Justice of the United States may have leaked the Dobbs decision a few years ago. It was only 30 people that could have leaked it. We don't seem to be getting much accountability from Trump's DOJ, as Mike was saying, to reset the scales back to neutral. Leon, is equal justice still possible in the United States of America, or is that a foregone conclusion?
Oh, this is a heavy lift, man. I would push back a little bit on the no accountability from Trump's DOJ. So I'd push back a little bit. The DOJ is actively soliciting examples right now of egregious judges for congressional review and impeachment referrals and things like that. They're trying to target those rogue judges that are blocking Trump's agenda. Is it happening as fast as I want it to? No. But, progress sometimes is slow. To kind of break down like your entire monologue, the conclusion that I would come to is it kind of reveals a breakdown in a judiciary that is captured by politics, where impartiality is sacrificed for ideology, if that makes any sense. And that always leads to overreach. It always leads to bias and inevitably eroded trust. The solution lies in a rigorous return to original intent. And I regularly speak about this doctrine because I love, like, 2 of my favorite justices are Alito and Thomas, and that's where they are. That's interpreting the Constitution based on the framers' understanding at ratification, not evolving social issues and things like that. Like, I just can't even I don't believe our founders could have wrapped their brains around a sitting president saying something like, we're gonna nominate this Supreme Court justice based on solely her gender and her race. Like, that blows my mind, man. That's not original intent. That's social justice, originalism. Uh, this is where we have to get back to, because when it's back to the original intent, then you take the politics out of it, and that's on either side of the field. It has to be interpreting the Constitution the way it was intended, and that's the way we get back. Now, liberals are not going to be okay with that. They're going to get all wee-weed up about it. And you also have the rhinos who are going to be like, well, no, that's I forget the term that they use, originalist. They kind of other folks like me that believe in like the original intent of our framers' mindset when they sat down and penned that document. And I don't think that very few people in Washington can hold the jock straps of those original guys. They just don't. They don't have the metal, man. And so it will be a heavy lift, and it will be we'd have to go back to original intent and leave all the politics out of it. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Ryan, let me ask you, have we given too much power importance to the judiciary as an equal branch? Originally this was just the Supreme Court was stuck in a small office in the basement of the Capitol when the country was first founded. Now it's become this, everybody looks to it, but it's not like they've got a federal force that they can enforce any decision. It's just me and you going along with it that allows this thing to work.
Well, I think if we've given too much power to the judiciary, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, because during the Biden administration, we relied on the courts, not necessarily at the district court level, but we relied on the appeals courts and the Supreme Court to curtail some of the things that the Biden administration was doing, such as student loan forgiveness for everyone, or various other things that they were having. So, but now during Trump's second term, we've needed the judiciary as well. And at the appeals and Supreme Court levels, just to overrule these activist lower court district judges that have tried to impose their views upon the entire country by issuing these national injunctions against anything and everything that the Trump administration is doing. But the vast majority of these rulings or these injunctions over the first year of Trump's term had been reversed either through the appeals court process or ultimately at the Supreme Court.
I just think they've taken too long. You know what I mean? You got to sit there and wait for Roberts, and that's the frustration, right?
Yeah. And you get the judge shopping going on, that they're trying to bring all these cases up in DC. So to your point of, are you going to get a fair trial in a blue state as a conservative? Well, we almost know that anything that goes to the DC district court level or Maryland or Virginia, anything to do with conservative policy is going to be struck down. It is what it is. You're preparing for the next round, for the appeals court, knowing that you're going to lose even going into it initially. One thing I'd like to say to wrap up on this topic is, I'm sure the three of you have noticed, but I'm wondering how many else out there in our audience have noticed that if you look at the Supreme Court, I can't recall a high-profile case where the three liberal justices, or four, when there were four of them on the Supreme Court, ever broke ranks with each other and had one of them side with the conservative justices on the court. For example, take last week when you had the ruling on the Trump tariffs. You had two Trump appointees, Gorsuch and Barrett, rule against Trump on the tariffs. And I'll leave Roberts as is, because Roberts is his own thing. But there have been many instances over the years where either Kavanaugh or Gorsuch or Barrett have joined the liberal justices and broke ranks with Alito and Thomas. But can you name ever a time that any of the three liberal justices did not vote lock and step with each other on a high-profile case.
You'd win a lot of money if it ever happened, if you bet on it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible. Mike, do you ever see Congress, right? We're supposed to have 3 equal branches, but do you ever see Congress taking back its power it freely abandoned over the last several decades?
Boy, that's a good one, Perry. I would say probably not. Not that they wouldn't want to, but I think it's almost impossible to now. I'm going to give you, I did take some notes on this because I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson because it seems now that so much more over the last several years that there's been so much more power given to the executive branch, and you've seen executive orders that seem to be governing the country rather than going through Congress. But so I had to look up some statistics here. Of course, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is on the other side of the aisle. And he was telling me, about the Trump being a king kind of thing. And I asked him, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, with all of his executive orders. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I said, I don't have the answers for you, but I'm going to look them up. So I looked them up and I thought this was perfect to share with you. But so George Washington was in office for 8 years. How many executive orders do you think George Washington had? Keep in mind, we were just starting in the country. How many executive orders did he have in 8 years? Take a guess, someone.
Is it under 10?
Yeah, it is under 10. He had 8.
0? Oh, 8.
Eight.
Okay.
8 in 8 years. So over the next 32 years, you had John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, and John Quincy Adams. So over those 32 years, 5 presidents, how many do you think we had in those 32 years? This is going to blow your mind.
Dozen.
10.
Few dozen.
10 total executive orders in 32 years. It wasn't really until it was Franklin Pierce had 35 executive orders while he was in office for 4 years. So he served from 1853 to 1857. So it took about 70 years before presidents really started using the executive privileges that they had granted to them. Ulysses S. Grant, just coming out of the Civil War, was the first president to break over 100 executive orders. He had 217 in the 8 years that he was in. But, like I said, that just coming out of a war, he had to do a few things to get this country back on track again. Okay. From 1901 to 1909, there were 1,081 executive orders. Who was our president from 1901 to 1909? You all know this one. Come on.
Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, Teddy was pretty active.
He was very active, yeah. But this is really when executive orders kind of started becoming more apt to be the preferred rule of government, I guess. But FDR had 3,700 executive orders while he was in office, and he was in just over 12 years. But after that, it was Truman and Eisenhower still had quite a few, but every president since then has been between 150 and 400 executive orders. So is Trump acting like a king? I would say no more than any other of our last 15 presidents. But so now that I've given you a history lesson here, I'm going to go back to answering your question and telling you why I think it's so difficult. But you ask which party is guilty of not using the power they have. If you look back in history, it's going to basically say that both are. But the problem is, in my opinion now, is that one of the parties is going to have to make some major changes, especially in the categories of spending. And whatever party does it, the people are going to suffer. There is no doubt about this. You're going to have to cut programs. You're going to have to cut spending. You're going to have to cut services. That's the only way you're going to be able to get out of debt. And I don't know if either party can do it. And the other challenge is you're not going to get this done in 4 years. And just over history, there's not a political party that stays in power for long enough to make these changes. So how do we? So I don't think it's that either party wants to, continue to do it, but it's that they have different ideas and they're never going to agree on how to do it. And the only way we're ever going to fix this is both parties sit down together and say, "Hey, listen, we need a long-term plan to start cutting our deficit, or our country's done." Can we do it? I don't know.
if we use this, I like to use sports connotations a lot. And to me, are we all baseball fans? I am.
Huge
But
baseball fan.
baseball's the only one that doesn't have a salary cap, right? And therefore you've got the Dodgers and the Yankees. You know what I mean? And that's what Congress is. Congress isn't the NFL. Congress is the Dodgers or the Yankees. How hard a job is it to constantly just spend as much as you want because you can just print as much as you want? Is it hard to be the Dodgers general manager or the Twins general manager or the Royals or the Detroit Tigers? That takes some effort. Now you got to dig, you got to look into programs. What should be cut? What should we keep? What's efficient? What isn't efficient? But our Congress, all they do is spend. And like you said, Mike, they whoever's their executive, Mike, you're a legislator. The North Dakota legislature doesn't work like that. You're an equal branch, right? You take ownership of being an equal branch in our state. You're not just going to kneel and bow to the governor. And we need Congress to get back to that. And both parties have to do that.
No, and here in North Dakota, we have a balanced budget every year. I mean, we used to have one in the United States until I think it was 1992, or it was late 1990s. I remember that. But I want to say something about your baseball analogy here, Perry. You saw what the Los Angeles Dodgers did with Shohei Ohtani, and I think it was Freddie Freeman with the other one, where they delayed or spaced out their contracts. So they're only making $2 million a year for the first few years, but now 10 years down the road, Ohtani is going to be making something like $60 million a year. This
like
is
an all-star
really
team
similar.
over there.
Yeah, it's similar to what we're doing in the federal government. You're spending money that you don't have, thinking you're going to inflate your way out of it in 10 years, but then you just keep spending and you're not making a plan for what's going to happen 10 years down the road. So
I'm supposed to cheer when the Dodgers win the World Series. I would love to go to Chavez Ravine, but I'm supposed to cheer and go, wow, what an accomplishment by that all-star team. Seriously. I mean, at least in the NFL, we're all spending the same amount of money, right? That's how I look at it.
You realize that the only time both parties are going to sit down and say, hey, we got to figure this out is going to be when there is no more money, when everything is so bad that we need austerity measures to course correct. And that'd be the only point, because you're right. Any party that and forget, the left will never do this, but any party in power that says, hey, we got to rein this in, they're going to trump. That's what they're going to do. That's why they're doing. This is why they ran Doge out of there. That's why they ran Elon out of there. Once you start hitting that money train, then
I saw a stat. They're going to be 60. We're going to be $62 trillion in debt in a decade.
There's no.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's no incentive for Congress to do their job nowadays. Mike was listing off statistics about how many executive orders were through the first 150 years of our country's existence, and I wonder how that correlates to how long congressmen, senators, representatives stayed in Congress. Now it's they feel it's their God-given right to stay there till they die. There's no incentive for them to do anything other than that except collect a check, make money, spend other people's money. They don't have. There's no, if there were term limits, I feel like they would have their, I'm not going to be here forever. I'm not going to become rich from this. Let's do what's best for the country type of thing.
It has to add part of it, right? You can't be there forever and not get corrupted.
But I think with the executive orders, it coincided with Congress not doing anything.
I don't think we could deny, though, that Congress has capitulated, right? They're not as the Senate passed like 2 bills so far this year. They're on vacation more than they might get a post office named once in a while. We're going to go to our last segment. We call this Looky Here. And we do that because there might be some things you see online, folks, that we catch or you catch, and you want to bring it to our attention. Well, we saw some things that maybe you didn't see, and so we want to bring this to our viewers' attention. We're going to start with Mike. Mike, why don't you kind of lead into your looky here suggestion for the week?
Sure. I loved this video. When you play it, you're going to see that it's in Russian, so you can't understand what he's saying, but you can read the words in the bottom. But this is a video that I think every single person in the United States needs to watch and reflect on the words that this guy is saying. To me, it just really made me think about what is the most important thing in life. And this was a coach, that was saying this. So why don't you go ahead and play it, Perry?
Tai kaip turėsi vaikų, jaunuolį suprasi. Nes čia yra maksimumas. Nei titulai, nei vaiką pirmą savo pamatysi, tai tu suprasi, kas yra gyvenime svarbiausia. Ateik su manim pašnekėti tada. Nes nieko negali būti didingesnio pasaulyje kaip vaiko gimimo.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So what that was about, I mean, if everybody couldn't see it or whatever, but this coach had a basketball player. I think was it basketball, or I don't even remember the sport it was, to be honest, but had a player that missed a semifinal game to attend the birth of his child. And the reporter asked this coach what he thought of his player skipping out on a semifinal game that meant so much just to go watch his kid be born. And the coach just was going off on just saying, like, hey, what's important in life? Basketball or hockey or whatever sport it was is always going to be here, but you're only going to have the birth of your first child once. I mean, so it was fantastic. And I mean, if you haven't watched the entire video, that's just a small clip of it. It's like a minute or a minute and a half long, but you should search it out and look at the whole thing. It just, that's the video that I liked that I saw this week that I thought made a difference.
It reminds me of,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it reminds me of, I'm trying to think, was it Scotty Scheffler a couple of years ago during a major golf tournament where his wife was due at any time, and they had asked him, if it's Saturday or if it's Sunday and you're coming down the stretch and maybe it was the Masters and your wife goes into labor, are you going to leave the course? And he was like, yes, I'm going to, yep.
Exactly.
I'm prepared.
That's when you have your priorities in the right order.
Yeah,
Right.
and Brian, I could see some people couldn't see the captions. I'll post that video with the captions on it. But basically, like, I love that coach's response. I mean, he looked at the guy like, "What are you, stupid? What kind of question is that? It's that's the birth of his first child."
He asked,
Like, there is no-
he asked the guy, have you ever had a child? Do you have children?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you haven't, you probably don't understand it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Leon,
There's
let's
nothing-
start with you. What did you see that you want our viewers to see? What did you notice during the week that you wanted our viewers to see?
Well, I'm on the eastern part of the state, so we have all this craziness that always happens in Fargo, and the good folks at Fargo First, they've been on this since the beginning. So, in case you're not familiar with the way Fargo does things, we hand out hypodermic needles. And we hand them out like there's nobody's business, like it's nobody's business. Also, we were handing out crack pipes and booth kits. I'm not going to explain booth kits because this is a family show. But we have handed out over 1 million of these needles. And it's supposed to, the folks that are handing them out, it's called the Harm Reduction Center. Now, they have reduced harm to the highest level in over 5 years since they've started recording the harm. And we've had 169 overdoses in just 2025. That is the highest since they've been taking records. And 29 of those were fatal. So these people, the city of Fargo is giving out hypodermic needles, a drug paraphernalia, which I thought if you're riding around in Fargo and a cop pulls you over and he's like, hey, what do you got there in your ashtray there, and you got some paraphernalia, that's a charge. And the city is giving you that paraphernalia. To me, it's crazy. It's blowing my mind. And then some of us, we've been talking about this for quite some time, but then this week Chief Zablinski comes out and he's like, yeah, 169 overdoses and 29 deaths. That's the year before, 2024. You can see 100, and now it's 169 with 29 deaths. So it's ticking up, and I think that the folks in Fargo, especially, need to talk to their city leaders and figure out, like, I am 100% against this whole harm reduction center. The gal that manages that, she makes six figures. Yeah. So of course she doesn't want that little piece of cake to go anywhere, but who cares if these many people are getting hurt? They're not really reducing harm. You're basically telling the folks, hey, it's okay to shoot up. It's okay to be an addict. We're going to help you with that. We're going to facilitate that.
Lord knows it's worked really well in San Francisco and Seattle, right? I mean, those are model cities that, Fargo's just went off the deep end ever since the George Floyd episode in Minneapolis. Fargo has went off the deep end and tried to be Minneapolis of the North, and we don't want that here. We don't want that here.
I'm not so sure, because the people in, especially the downtown area, those folks there, it doesn't seem to me like it's people like me that are out here in the sticks, and the people at Fargo First, and you got a couple of city leaders that have been kind of talking about this, but you go downtown, you don't feel safe. You let your kid play in a park or something, or walk the street, and they're picking up hypodermic needles, and you're like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Fargo has to wake up. Like, there's got to be a change in leadership. And I would start with the police chief. I am not a fan, and I've been pretty vocal about it. You got to start with a couple of those city commission seats. I am not a fan of several of them. And we need a new mayor, a conservative mayor. And, I'm gonna walk that one back because I started to say a name. I'm not gonna do that. But yeah.
Let me go on a Perry rant. I've been known, and you guys know me for a while. I can do that, and I'm kind of like Dennis Miller when you get me charged up. So I had a guy ask me a couple years ago. Remember when DeSantis started sending people to Martha's Vineyard, illegals, and so he comes up to me and he says, Perry, why do we have to ship all these people out of Texas to Martha's Vineyard? Why is that right? And I said, so his name happened to be John. I said, John, let's imagine you're a landowner in Texas and your family's owned this land since the beginning of the country. You're right on the Mexican border. And all of a sudden we have illegals coming in. That landowner that's been there for generations is supposed to take all of the abuse that your liberal wife, he's conservative, but if his wife is liberal, your liberal wife votes for in Fargo, North Dakota. She's 2,000 miles away, but that guy is supposed to take the abuse so that she can get her warm and fuzzies. I said, what ought to happen, John, is the illegal ought to be living in your driveway. Well, not my driveway, Perry. He said, I'm conservative. Then I said, on her half of the driveway. And dropping needles and whatever else he wants to drop, deuces or whatever he wants to. So she has to walk over it every day. So she experiences what her vote is about. But you live in far enough out of downtown Fargo, so she doesn't have to walk over the riffraff that she votes to support. She only gets the warm and fuzzies because she's far enough out. She's 3 miles out, northern part of town, and she never has to see this. Yeah. She never you have to experience what you vote for, and then maybe you'll have an understanding of it. And I said, you ought to have a family of illegals. They ought to be living in your house, or at least on her part of the driveway or in the garage. Make her live with what she voted for. There's my rant.
I guarantee you.
That's a rant that I remember from 20 years ago. First time I ever met you, Leon. I gotta push back a little bit on you when you were talking about the legal stuff. Okay, I just want you to answer this for me. Okay, because this is something that I push all the time. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, but I just want to ask you. Okay, and this is if you complain about elected officials, which you're entitled to do so, I just want to ask, have you reached out to your mayor and asked him if you could speak to him about this issue, or any of your city commissioners and asked if you could speak to him?
Do you not know who I am, dude? Of course
okay.
I have.
I'm
Of
just
course
asking.
I have.
I've given speeches about this. I'm just asking you, have you asked if I could come in and sit with you and talk to you about this issue? Instead
Well,
of go ahead.
I have not gone like to their office, sat down and spoken to them, but I have spoken to Zablensky. I have spoken to Michelle Turnberg. I have I have spoken to city leaders about this, and I've been very vocal. I've written articles in the forum. I use my social media to push this and make sure that I tag all of the like WDAY, KVOY, and every. I don't want to just talk about it. I want them to understand what's going on, and I think they do. As a matter of fact, Michelle Turnberg has been a rock star on this. She has worked with like Fargo First and with me and different folks to get this message out. And so that's my avenue to get into City Hall. Again, I tell people I carry everywhere I go. So I'm not going to Fargo City Hall because I am not disarming myself. But I will talk to the city leaders. And if they'll listen to me, you can get Leon 24 hours a day, 24/7, man. You can get some Blackbeard logic.
Brian,
I understand all that. I just want to tell you something. As an elected official, okay, I'm going to tell you this is something that I learned a few years ago too. But as an elected official, I will just say, almost every elected official I know, if you come in and ask them, like, hey, can I talk to you about this issue? They're going to sit and listen to you. You might not agree, but at least they'll listen, and you might be able to, the two of you come up with an answer together or understand each other or something. I'm much less receptive to people who will just sit there and blast out things, and purposely try to get them on social media or whatever, in whatever the method is. I'm just saying, and like I said, this isn't just you I'm picking on. I pick on.
It kind of feels like you're picking on me. I'm just gonna
I am picking on you because you're here right now, but. I would encourage you and just say, hey, can I come in and talk to you about this? They're going to be a lot more receptive, and there's a better chance you'll actually get something done. If you use some of the methods that you were saying, I will just say a lot of elected officials will just put up a wall and not listen to your concerns. It's just a fact. I'm not criticizing or anything. I'm just telling you, most of the elected officials, even the ones that I work with on a daily basis on the other side of the aisle, I might not agree with much that they say, but if I go sit down at their desk and talk to them, they're willing to listen. Let's try, most of them will work together with you on something. So that's all I'm done. I'm off my soapbox.
As Charlie Kirk said, I just want to have a conversation.
Right.
Charlie Kirk is so much better than me. I just can't see me walking into John Strand's.
Yep.
I can't see me walking into John Strand's office going, "Hey, pal, can we?" I don't think it'd go well. But I take your point. There are several the city. I even know John Strand from like way back. So okay,
we're gonna move on to Ryan.
I just wanted to piggyback on Perry's Ramp. One thing that I guarantee you, all the ICE protesters that were in Minnesota and Minneapolis here the last month, I could count probably on my hand how many of them would take in any of their illegal immigrants and have them living in their home, providing their services, feeding them, clothing them, giving them health care, so I don't have to.
Ryan, let's start with you. What did you, let's move on to you. What did you see that you want your viewers to see that they might have missed?
So there was a article here this past week where the Ms. Murphy, the leader of the Minnesota State Senate, Democrat leader, discussing the no tax on tips that was part of the Trump Big Beautiful Bill, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, where Minnesota still, those items are still taxable here in the state. And it was asked her, why doesn't the state of Minnesota make these non-taxable as well? Because, you do the people that it's impacting are the average everyday person who's working at the restaurant, the mom, the single mom, trying to make a living. It would be beneficial to her. And as Ms. Murphy quoted here, tax conformity, while relief for people is a cost to our budget. So she's more worried about her budget and the free tuition that are provided to illegal immigrants here in the state, free tuition that are provided to anybody making less than $80,000, the new, very expansive paid leave laws that Minnesota just implemented that I've got to contribute to. They're more concerned about their budget than they are tax relief for their average working day citizens that they purportedly so dearly care about. So that was what I had noticed.
Anybody got any comments? That seems to be a lot of reaction to, especially I would say a liberal person serving the state. That's my money that you're talking about, and I want to spend it the way I deem necessary.
It does kind of show you the mindset. Like, your money isn't your money. It's the money that we allow you to have. That mindset, that is a very ugly mindset. Something we got to, I don't know how you reverse that, though.
We had a $17 billion surplus 2 years ago. They increased the state budget by $17 billion that year when it was Democratic controlled.
Okay, we're gonna end with a little humor. This is mine. Everybody knows that Marco Rubio is kind of carrying a lot of hats for the Trump administration. And if you're active on social media, you see that he has a lot of memes where he's put in different with different responsibilities. Last week, it was rumored that Journey was bringing back Steve Perry and going back out on tour. Steve Perry was going to be the lead singer of Journey once again. The day after that was put out on social media, Steve Perry wrote a formal reply saying, "No, this is just conjecture. I am not going to be singing again with Journey." So, of course, this is the meme that instantly got made. It fits perfectly. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh out loud, which takes a lot. And so I wanted to make sure our viewers saw the next job that Marco Rubio has. So I thought that was pretty funny. Well, guys, I think our first show went pretty well. What do you think? We went way over our time, so that has to mean something, right?
We have
Or
to
it
ask our
means that
advertisers
one of
about
us- It means that, some of us are bloviators. That's what that means.
We might all four suffer from that disease. Well, we're going to be back in 2 weeks with episode 2 of the Due North Political Podcast. We thank everybody for watching. We'll get clips out to you online, and hopefully you'll share with your friends. We'll have a new, unique topic every week, and we're going to get these guys' opinions, and I'll try to test their thought processes. Thanks for watching.
Thanks. Have a good evening, everybody.